Okay, so our norms, first off, we want to make sure that we have equity of voice. Everybody has an equal opportunity to speak. Please don't be an air hog. Be conscientious of how much time you're spending speaking. Promote reflective listening and participation, which means turning and looking at who it is that you are speaking to, and make sure that you are actively listening, nodding, taking notes as necessary. Make sure to respect all perspectives. We are not going to see everything the same way. We can all watch a car accident and we all saw something different. So make sure that you have an open mind to other perspectives, because realistically, we're here to help shift that lens. Honor the agenda and the time limits. Keep a positive tone. Discuss issues. Discuss ideas and not issues, because once you start down the path of issues, people tend to find a rabbit hole and get very distracted. When you discuss ideas, the conversation stays lively and engaging, and people start solving problems rather than looking for more of them. Set aside time to reflect. So even if we end our day and you are feeling like you want to look back on this, please reflect, because it is the paramount for growth. And lastly, be honest in a courageous space. We're going to have some uncomfortable conversations at times, and I encourage you to make sure that you are feeling like you can say what you want to say and speak from your heart and not feel limited. Our outcomes. Identify how to teach with compassion within our community, because there's a difference between you walk in the door, you teach like a boot camp drill sergeant, and actually having compassion for the students in your room. To be human with them is a really important aspect. You also want to reflect on our teaching methods and our practices, take in new pieces, share what we have with others. We're going to learn about rumbling, which means that we're working in that uncomfortable cognitive dissonance where we're struggling, but it's a productive struggle. We're going to find a solution as long as we continue to work together. And we're going to analyze braving, which is a tool for trust within the classroom, having values that we can all respect, honor, and uphold. This is Marie. Hi, Marie. So she couldn't be here with us today, but our coaches are all over and they are here to support you. So this is Marie. Hi, Marie. And I also work with Lena. Okay, so on a piece of paper, which is in front of you, you can select a piece of paper. I would like you to write down anything that makes you think of classroom management for the next 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, in Hawaii, they have this proverb. If you want to learn about yourself, look to the land, but use more than your eyes. And this is more about speaking to the fact that as a learner, you need more than just your eyes to perceive and take everything in. Nature is always around us, and we interact with nature with all of our senses, which means we can only do better with our teaching by incorporating all of our senses, but maybe we shouldn't chew on our students. They probably don't taste good. If you want to learn about your class, look to your students and use more than your eyes, because your students give feedback all the time, whether it's this is boring, this is awesome, and they have totally different energies when they're doing those things. So we're constantly getting feedback, what they say to their friend, oh, this is cool, check this out. Those are the things that as a teacher, my heart is like fluttering and I feel like I'm brand new, like teacher all over again. And it's so exciting to hear students get excited about what we're teaching. So I look forward to you being just as excited in your classroom to hear your students buzzing about how awesome you are. If you want students to learn in your class, you also have to look at your students, because if your students are being apathetic and they're not really tied in and they're not wanting to participate, what do you do to serve them anyways? How do we pull ourselves out? And what can you add to your meaning of classroom management? So you did that 3 to 5 minute activity, and now after this discussion, I'd like you to add in some more details about classroom management. So for the next 2 minutes, go ahead and do that. Classroom management, a structured environment that promotes learning. We talked about the 5 senses earlier, and as teachers in the hearing world, we use our ears so much. And the reason I say the hearing world is our deaf students and our deaf teachers out there, they don't use their ears, but they use the vibrations in their chest. And that's how they are able to hear what's going on. We also want to know what it looks like in a classroom and what it feels like. So when we look at our classroom, I want you to just quickly close your eyes and visualize your classroom. Picture yourself in front of the room with students who are ready to learn. And I want you now to take 30 seconds and draw the happiest kid in that room. Great. Now I want you to write one word that tells you that feeling you have in your body when you picture your classroom. One word. And the last thing I'd like you to do is I would like you to, in your own way, tell me what it sounds like in your room. Okay, great. For the next 2 minutes, we're going to take 1 minute apiece and we're going to think, pair, share, which means you're going to physically turn your bodies towards one another and look at each other and engage in the conversation. One of you speaks for 60 seconds and then you switch spaces with your partner. Are there any questions? Okay, go ahead. So teaching with compassion. This is a classroom, not boot camp. Think to yourself, how much do you personally enjoy being yelled at? For me, I was kind of crazy at some point in my life and I signed up for that. And I thought it was a great idea. I thought, wow, I'm going to get somewhere by having somebody yell at me. Said no person ever. Shift your thinking in your classroom less like discipline and more like an act of compassion. When we remember that our students are humans too and they have lives outside of our classroom, suddenly our heart opens up a space for them and allows them in, and we have to be just as vulnerable with our students and let them see us as humans because we are human too. And the more that we are able to be human with our students, the better off we are. And it's important not to just consider consequences and making assumptions, but we need to know how and when to discipline students. Knowing the difference between sending the girl with the spaghetti straps to the office and just saying, hey, don't wear that. You know, can you wear a sweater? Is there something else you have? Put on your gym shirt. Instead of having that student miss more class time. Weigh the pros and the cons of there being a negative consequence. And make sure to highlight the consequences can be a positive thing, because otherwise we keep the word consequence in a negative bucket. And how many positive consequences are there out there? I mean, for me, a positive consequence was impacting my learning as an adult and learning more about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and going back to school and raising my level of awareness. And through all of that, I have learned that the way I was doing things was a horrible way to learn. And so through all of this, I've grown, and I am so excited to share with you how to grow too. So as we're doing our leveled consequences, there's 4 different layers, as you can see. It goes from the bottom to the top, starting with the gentle level, level 1, where the teacher's kind of stepping in and doing what they need to do, putting themselves in proximity to the students, tapping on the desk, calling them by name, making sure it's a very gentle approach to redirecting your students. Next is level 2, where you might need like a brief timeout or a temporary seat change. Hey, Lena, can you move over there for right now? That'd be great. Thank you so much. Oh, and can you move over here? And can you move over there? Because we want to make sure that we are being compassionate. So in order to not make students feel singled out, in general, as a practice, I don't have just one student move because then they always question me. Well, why do I have to move? I teach middle school, so they have a ton of attitude that they are just coming into. And it's not because they're angry at you or that they really feel like you need that level of attitude. It's they're defining their individuality and their personality. So for some of us who were raised to not talk back to an adult, it comes off very awkwardly to us. So finding our compassion is the most important piece of leveled consequences. Take a breath, maybe call home after school if you feel it's necessary. Level 3 is our moderate, which is a permanent seat change. Small privileges are revoked. You might get a referral or a reflection sheet where you have to take some time, or the student has to take some time to really flesh out what it was that they did and how the community is harmed by their words or their actions. And finally, we are at red firing hot. It's extreme. The child needs to go. They're possibly being suspended from the class because they're being unsafe or just flat out disrespectful. And we need a community of learners that are ready to learn. So for the next 5 minutes, you're going to reflect on how we can incorporate compassion in these traditional consequences. So I'm going to give you an example. Level 2 happens to say that there's a brief timeout in the room or in the hallway. And I personally never, ever, ever ask my students to step outside of my room because then they're missing instruction. You have no idea. You could have just said the most important thing to them and now they've missed it because you've had them exit the room. If I'm feeling like there needs to be a timeout, I put myself on timeout. So I, the teacher, go outside for 10 seconds. I breathe. Sometimes I let out that, I can't believe this. Why can't they learn? Why aren't we making progress? And it's just a way of resetting ourselves. So spend the next 5 minutes reflecting on ways you can put compassion in at the 4 different levels. Okay, welcome back. Now we're going to be moving on to building relationships first, and engagement will follow. Because if you just walked into a room and you aren't really connecting with another person in that room, you have to remember that your connection is so important. And when you don't feel connected, you don't feel willing, you don't feel able, you don't feel like being vulnerable. You put your hood up over your head and stick your hands in your pocket, and you'd rather hide and put your earphones in and tune out our world. But if you have a relationship, hey, Barbara, thanks for coming today. We are never the same when you're not here. Welcoming students into your room. Are you guys ready to learn? I mean, just having that attitude at the door, your attitude and that relationship you've made with your students is number one. And it's going to get their buy-in, because who really, wants to spend time with somebody that doesn't make them feel awesome on the inside? If I can make you shine, then you want to be here because you want to shine for me and I want to shine for you. So I have this mentality where I tend to match the people in the room. So I tell my students, be prepared to set the energy. And it's a technique I'm working on as an adult where I kind of take a little bit more power and maybe I'll start setting the energy rather than matching my students, because having, 10 kids with ADHD, I probably look like this when I'm teaching. But That's okay sometimes, but sometimes we've got to keep it calm for the kids that need it calm too. There needs to be a balance. And so in our classroom, we're constantly trying to balance the energies, the personalities, the bodily functions, and the content on top of it all. Small three-ring circus is pretty much what we're doing daily. And remember that classroom management is the foundation of every classroom. If you cannot manage your classroom, I guarantee you that your class is probably not going to be very successful. You will be frustrated, and so will your students. And that is a really defeating feeling of working yourself to the bone and wondering, what else can I do for my students? Don't worry, we're here to help you with that. So we're going to do a partner chat from the Hacking Strategies to Build Trust from the Hacking series by Jennifer Gonzalez and Mark Burns. And our first topic is going to be respect and trust one another. Use simple actions to show that you trust your students, such as bathroom passes, seating, and late work. So in my classroom, our bathroom pass is, I'm a huge Batman fan, and it is actually a cape that I got from the local theme park with Batman on the back. So it never has to touch anybody. It never has to touch the floor. It doesn't get soap all over it, and they enjoy wearing their cape as they walk to the restroom or they're going to the office or whatever it is, and they feel a little bit more super wearing a cape. Now, I'm not saying capes are for everybody, but have something that's unique and shows them that you trust them to walk out your door and go to the restroom, because at times that can be very scary. We want to make sure that we are making seating choices that are supporting our learners, whether it means giving them the opportunity to choose their seats or you are choosing for them based on a need that they have in the most supportive environment. And other things are late work. Sometimes we're late as adults with our own deadlines. And how stressful is it to be coming up to the end of the deadline going like, oh my gosh, I need to finish this, I need to finish this. Our students are learning these skills too. There are procrastinators out there, and it's just part of us. So what I'd like you to do is turn and talk to your neighbor about how you envision using this in your classroom. And we're going to do 30 seconds apiece. Okay, for the next one, we're going to talk about the golden rule. Treat students how you want to be treated. If you want to be yelled at, then please yell at your students. If you would like sarcasm to come your direction, please be sarcastic with your students. If you want them to be compassionate, you must model the compassion. So treat others the way you want to be treated. So go ahead and turn and talk to your neighbor, 30 seconds again, about which strategies you envision yourself practicing in your own classroom. Okay, next we're going to allow students to give you feedback. Now this is scary and it's not for all teachers. Honestly, prepare yourself. Taking feedback from students can be a lot of work, especially when they don't think about how they're wording it and they're not necessarily considering your feelings, because we don't always consider their feelings, and we just get to that 300th essay and we are just tired and we are just go, grade, grade, grade. And that's how that feedback becomes over time, is that it just becomes rote. And the same thing with our students. So 30 seconds apiece again. Okay, last one. Don't do mass punishments. Please, please, please do your best to avoid punishing an entire class for something of a specific individual or a small group of individuals, because mass punishment never works out well. Somebody always goes home and says something to a parent about how they didn't do anything and the teacher made us all do X, Y, or Z, or all of us missed out on blank. Mass punishments just don't work. So I want you to turn and talk to your neighbor again, 30 seconds apiece, about how you can envision yourself practicing this in your classroom. And now for the fun stuff. It's time to talk about you. Are you ready? Okay, so you first off need to know your values and your ethics. What is it that you bring to the table that you will and will not tolerate? Be firm, be fair, be consistent. So you're going to quickly write down what your absolutes, I will not tolerate this. So spend the next 2 minutes. What will you not tolerate in your classroom? Okay, for the next 2 minutes, I want you to write down things you will tolerate in your classroom. What do you want to see? What do you want to feel? Okay, and lastly, I want you to identify one of your core values, something that is your rock that no matter what, you can stick to it. And you want to make sure that that is the base for your classroom. Okay, now you're going to turn and talk with your neighbor about the things that you will and will not tolerate and your one core value, and I'd like you to compare and contrast. 7 minutes or so, we're going to have a discussion. Please remember equity of voice and active participation. Brenda, sorry. Okay, so teachers versus other professionals. So teachers are our own breed and other professionals are their breeds. We all interact at some point in time. We've all had a teacher, we are a teacher, we know a teacher, we live near a teacher, we think there might be a teacher somewhere out there. So despite whatever it is that we've been trained to do when we go into fight or flight, or we are so exhausted, the things that we start to really implement are the things that we remember from the past, the models we've already seen work. What did we see work as students in a different classroom? What have we seen our college professors do? What have we seen our coworkers do when we watch their lessons? What have we learned in professional development? What tools from the past can you incorporate in your personal toolkit? You're going to spend the next 3 to 5 minutes contemplating and writing down how to incorporate these skills into your personal toolbox. Okay, time for a partner chat. I know we're doing a lot of discussions, and classroom management has a lot to do with discussions because there's so many opinions, so many views, and so many different ways of doing things out there that you really need to work to make it happen for you. So what classroom management strategies did your teachers use? We're going to turn and talk 30 seconds apiece. Okay, who was your favorite teacher and why? Think of them. Do they wear a super cape? Okay, so 30 seconds, turn and talk about your favorite teacher and why they're your favorite teacher. Okay, what classroom management strategy did your favorite role model use? Now, your role model doesn't have to be a teacher. It could be Larry Bird. It could be Barbara Streisand. It could be just about anybody, like maybe somebody from Queen. It could be anybody who inspired you and a strategy that they employed and put inside of you, and you were like, yes, I am the best darn Freddie Mercury out there. Or I'm the best darn Batman. But we all knew that already. Let's get ready to rumble. So now we're going to talk about rumble. Now, when you see this, how many of you giggled just a little bit in your head? I did. I giggled like 10 times. So rumbling with classroom management. This is a really long quote, and I want to give you 2 minutes right now to read it to yourself before I move on. Okay, so to rumble is a discussion, conversation, or a meeting defined by commitment to lean into vulnerability, to stay curious and generous, to stick with the messy middle of the problem identification and solving, to take a break and circle back when necessary, to be fearless in owning our parts, and as psychologist Harriet Lerner says, to listen with the same passion with which we want to be heard. More than anything else, when someone says, "Let's rumble," it cues me to show up with an open heart and an open mind so we can serve the work and each other, not our egos. Now that quote is full of buzzwords. I want you to work in your quad right now for the next 4 minutes, and I want you to pick out all of those buzzwords that you can. Okay, so here are some of the words that I found. A rumble is a commitment to vulnerability, sticking with the messy, listening with passion, showing up with an open heart and mind, and serving the work in each other, not our egos. These are kind of the things that we're doing in our classrooms to manage ourselves as well as our learners. When we rumble with ourselves, we are rumbling with how deep am I going to send my students into this? We rumble with what doesn't feel good in our world. It's that productive struggle to stay alive. Teaching is hard. Would anybody disagree with me? No, I didn't think so, because I can't disagree with me either. I am a teacher of 11 years, and teaching is hard, still 11 years later. However, we get a little bit better, we build more tools, we feel stronger. Every day we continue at it, just like any craft. You feel the warmth in your heart, and you know in your mind that you're still doing good work and moving on and making a better tomorrow. Classroom management is fluid and changes based on what's happening with your student. If your students aren't really, into it, sometimes you have to trash a lesson in the middle of it, and that's okay. Go ahead and rumble with the uncomfortable. Okay, now we're moving into braving. So as you can see with braving, each of the letters at the beginning of each of the letters from the acronym braving are introducing us to different concepts: boundaries, reliability, accountability, vaulting, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. You're able to read the slides and kind of what they're about, but I really wanted to take a really close look at the word integrity. What is integrity to you? What is that value that you already wrote down, that core value? And take it and explain it. What would it look like if a student had integrity in your classroom with your core value? What does it look like when you show up with integrity and your core value is in the front? These are ways that we can get into our minds and into our practice and get to the nitty-gritty of what's most important in our classrooms. So here's a picture of students, and I want you to take a close look at it. You've gone on a field trip, you've taken your students, you're super excited because you finally took a group photo with all your students and you're ready to share it with your principal. Oh wait, look again. Integrity is being challenged by these two students, where it's okay to have fun. And you know what? Middle school kids totally think that's funny. And as an adult, I might even giggle. But realistically, that's not one of our core values. That's not what we want in a classroom. These are not messages we want to spread further. These are the kinds of messages that we use as lessons to our students. This is where braving and rumbling really come in. Because I'm rumbling with, I really wanted to show this picture to the principal and I only have one group photo and this is it, and now I can't show it to the principal, or do I show it to the principal? And that realistically lies within you. That's your rumble. So using brave and rumble, I want you to kind of think about what you would do. What's the right thing to do instead of just what's fast and easy. Okay, so we are using braving and we've got our picture of our students, and now we're going to turn and talk and we're going to share our ideas of how we would approach this with our students using the braving strategy on the bottom of your worksheet. So now that we've talked about braving and guiding ourselves through rumbling with this type of issue in our classroom, I wanted to go over some of the basic ideas that we really want you to walk away with today. So number one is our family engagement. You have to reach out to the families. They are a huge part of why we're even here. Without the families, we wouldn't have jobs. We wouldn't be here, obviously, if there weren't families. That's just taking it back maybe too far. But this means reaching out to the families, making them feel included. How are you sharing that information? Are you giving them access in languages that they can understand? Are you telling them when their student's doing well and when their student could be improving? Are you giving actionable steps or just a litany of complaints? It's really up to you to make that connection with the family. You need to know your students. You need to know how they're going to thrive, how they're going to wilt when they just don't want to, or not another test. You know how they are. Because kids are kids. At the end of the day, no matter what, they're still students, just like us. Teachers are lifelong students. We never really graduate. You need to take command of your classroom. People that don't have a good command of a room will lose the room quickly to anybody who's willing to step up and take it. And the last thing you need is an 11-year-old deciding they are steering your ship. You also don't need a 5-year-old in kindergarten steering the ship either, or a high school student. But it's always great to try and tap into that route, because you never know, that goofy student who's taking the stage could become the next Trisha Dennis at STEM for Real, because it was always a joke to me. Nothing could be serious. Why are we in school? I had no idea, but here I am, an educator of 11 years and counting, gratefully and happily. And I look forward to you being able to have one more notch in your, I did another year this year. That's really important, but you have to take the control and maintain it. It's your ship. You have to be the captain. And last thing, remember just one thing about every student in your room. It is possible to find at least one thing about anybody who you know, even the crazy lady with all the cats who lives upstairs. She has great plants outside of her apartment, and that's your one great thing. This student is very loud and are able to speak to people at great distances. That's a positive, and inside of a classroom it could be a negative, but that's the one thing you could really remind that student of. You know, you're really good at calling people together with your voice. Thank you. Sometimes we need that. So thank you very much for joining us for Classroom Management. It has been a pleasure.